Welcome back to the county seat. We are having our discussion today. Once again, we find ourselves in Uintah County at the county courthouse. Joining us for the conversation, Ron Winterton from Duchesne County Commissioner and the chair of the Uintah County Commission, and I might add, a 30-plus year veteran of the BLM, Bill Stringer. Thank you for joining us for the conversation. If you had a magic wand based on your 3 decades of experience and you say, I realize this is a problem, and I would like to help local communities have a better experience with this, how would you wave that magic wand?
Just stick to the process.
Here's the wand. Go ahead and wave it.
From here on out, we will follow the BLM and the associated agencies will only follow the process as it's outlined. That there are no, it's really not that hard to do. It's not that hard to follow the steps of collecting the data and of writing up the impacts. What happens is there becomes a debate on whether that's the right way to say it, or if there's something else that could be added or should be added. It becomes more of a subjective exercise than an objective exercise.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times during this process, you have to kind of step back because they're allowing so much public comment in it that there are special interest groups that want to derail the project, and so that causes a big delay. And so we address those interests, and then we come back to the main objective and get moving again when something else is thrown.
How big of an impact does this have on communities with the tortoiseness of the process?
Well, you get a company that's a pretty good size, you know, their game plan, they're looking 10, 12 years down the road, and they got to have this process going on for several development plans. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, if they don't have some place where they can send their workers, they either leave state and go somewhere else, or they just lay them off. And so that keeps coming back to the locals, is how do you keep that workforce engaged? And if they have some inventory that might be state ground or private ground, that's kind of the backup plan. In the meantime, while we're waiting for these others to get processed, we're going to go there.
If EOG gets this 1,000 wells, they're talking about a 20-year execution plan. So 10 years into their execution plan, if it took 8 to get the next one, 10 years in, they should be starting the next round of 1,000 wells?
Yes. And Newfield has done that. That area out there was inland oil, I believe. And over the years, there has been expansion because they found out more as they went. And Newfield did a good job of realizing how many APDs they had left before they ran out. And they started the process of looking down the road. And that makes it easier for BLM. You've got an area that's been looked at. You look at the new proposal, you have all this baseline information, plus you have good hard data that you didn't have when you did this one.
One thing that Bill was saying, you know, if we're going to go after 1,000, the public will look at that and think, oh, they're just going to rape and pillage the ground. And yet, no, we're looking at 10 or 15-year program here, and so they're going to spread those 1,000 wells over a long period of time, not just one big surge. And so that's the thing that sometimes is pretty hard for people, that we're just really drilling holes everywhere. It's not that way.
And that's an interesting thing to point out, because they are talking about 1,000 wells in this EOG project. And so somebody might be sitting at home in their armchair in Salt Lake City and they're going, 1,000 oil derricks across, 1,000 pump jacks or gas towers. That's not how it works, though, is it?
No. Now they'll take a pad, say 8 acres, and put 16 wells on it, and then when they reclaim it down to what surface they actually need, you might have wells going under the ground directional, but you only have one wellhead basically to speak of, or 4, and then the equipment that goes with that, you'll have lesser or a fewer amount of tanks on the location. Instead of every location, would have probably 2 to 3 tanks on there, one for water, a couple for the oil, and then compressor and processor, and then. But now you're not seeing that. You're seeing that for 8 or 10 in one location.
Bill, do you think that makes multiple use and multiple enjoyment of the land a little bit better with the new technology and how they consolidate.
It is, and it actually changes the way BLM looks at the environmental impact. When we did the resource management plans and they were completed in 2008, we were still working on a theory of one well, one vertical well, with about 3 acres of disturbance, including the pad, the road, the pipeline. And that has, I think as Commissioner Winterton just mentioned, that is no longer the case. So if there were 1,000 wells that were going to be planned under the old RMP, there would be 3,000 acres of disturbance. But when you can pad drill and put, well, in some cases, there are very large numbers of wells, 24, 30 wells on a single pad, you've cut it way down. Instead of, say, 30 wells, 300 acres, you're down to 15.
One would think that would make some of the groups that protest all these drilling permits a little less concerned about it because it's not marring the landscape quite so much.
You would hope that that would be the reasoning for it, but they're still there. They're just groups that are against fossil fuel. And as I look around, I don't know anything that we do in today's society that we don't depend on fossil fuel for, whether it's your clothes, you know, get to work or go out to recreate. All of us like the water, and so we need that. I mean,
Pens.
Yeah, everything in our daily walks of life comes right back to fossil fuel.
I guess to address that, my concern and what I saw, the evolution of NEPA over the years was NEPA was not that complex of a law in the beginning, and just over time, as things arose that were unforeseen by Congress and developed, then the law became more complicated. And as I sit and look at what happened in Vernal, I watched the resource issues change, and it changed because better information, for one. But BLM continues, EPA, they continue to advance the level of evaluation. The level of evaluation today for air quality is leaps and bounds beyond where it was 10 years ago. BLM used to do air quality evaluations based on a near field, far field, very simple. And now it's 1 atmosphere models for ozone and for a variety of things. And so the impacts that you would have seen are reducing, but it seems like every time as the advancements are made and environmental impacts are lessened, then something new comes along to complicate the process. Now, I think it's left to the observer to decide whether those are trivial or whether they're meaningful. But I think as long as you keep adjusting to and addressing those impacts, I'm not sure why there would be so much opposition. No one wants a dirty environment. No one wants dirty air to breathe. No one wants dirty water to drink. But a lot of those things have been addressed way beyond what was
never intended.
Just, well, maybe not intended, but believed possible. And yet it seems as if it's still
an issue,
and it's still an uphill climb.
One last takeaway, if there's something each of you thinks that the audience should know that we haven't covered today.
The only thing I would say is what can help everybody involved, and that is a large number of agencies who have their fingers in the pie, a large number of people who are interested on both sides, is communication. The better the communication, the earlier the communication, the more opportunity you have to reduce or have to redo something later on. I said I wish this really was a magic wand.
Is part of it also the attitude in which you're listening and communicating?
Always.
Yeah, if you could look at the betterment of all, what is best? I mean, it's not one side versus the other side. What makes sense? And if we can go in and try to come out with some kind of a resolution to resolve it and to work forward, I mean, it's win-win. Not everybody gets everything that they want, but if we can compromise to the point where this is good and both sides see that we're going to reclaim this, it's not going to be a scar, or that we're going to lessen the impacts. We're concerned about our air quality here. We're not going to do something that's going to jeopardize our health.
Let's hope we can find a streamlined solution. Gentlemen, thank you for taking your time today. We've talked about a lot of wells. When we come back, we will look at what happens after the well party is done and they've packed up and left. How do they clean it up? It's a very interesting story. We're back with our On the Ground segment on Account of Seat.